Hello? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have our next interview on the cross-generational dialogues. We'll be having a conversation between Edda Hamar, who is one of the UN SDG youth leaders, and we're going to have also Jakob, who is the founder and creative director of Trollbäck Plus company. So we're going to give them the stage to continue the discussion on the SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Woo! Hello, Jakob.
Hello there.
For those watching at home, Jakob Trollbäck is the founder and creative mastermind behind company Trollbäck and Company, and he works with clients like Apple and Nike and Spotify, but more importantly, he is the creative force behind the SDG icons and branding and the colourful branding that we see around today. So, Jakob, can you tell me what was the first thing that came to your mind when someone brought this project to you and said, we need to create logos to literally change the world?
I don't know, I just said yes. I'm good, like, this is a cool project. I mean, I didn't understand. Well, I thought that this could be big, but I knew it was going to be important. So that was definitely clear. But it was all kind of. We were hoping that what we did would be well received by the UN and the world, but we didn't know for sure. But excitement.
Yeah, yeah. You spoke earlier about the idea of basically taking this complex document of very boring information and simplifying it down to very simple concepts. What were some of the challenges involved with going from black and white document paper to the beautiful icons that we have today?
Well, it's the SDGs are complicated for a reason, and they're complicated because there's a lot of people who has to agree on the language, and I learned why a lot of these sentences are really, really long. Sentences that can be as long as a paragraph. That's because there's always someone who is like, well, my stuff isn't going to be in the second sentence. It needs to be in the first sentence. So the sentences just run on and on. So ultimately you have to figure out what is the core message here. And for most of the goals, it wasn't that hard to find sort of a focus on it. There's some that had sort of multiple meanings where we had to make a decision. And I think that one of the biggest and hardest one was zero hunger, which is also a goal about good nutrition, which all the nutrition people were upset because we didn't get nutrition into the main goals. But in general, it was just about trying to figure out what the core message was.
Yeah. Excellent. Which goal do you identify most with and why?
Well, goal 13 is sort of, if we don't fix climate change, like everything else is going to be unimportant in a sense. But having said that, there can be no other goal than goal 5, I think, which is gender equality. No, but there's been a lot of talk about this and how well, I say that men has created the situation we're in, and it's time for unfortunately, women usually do clean up after men, and so this time, you know, I think women needs to fix this mess too, and we need to let them to do, like, run things in a more sensible way. And besides, how can you just say that half of the population, half of the world's population, should not have the same power, the same voice? It's so stupid. It's just dumb. Jakob Trollbäck says, it's stupid.
Yeah. To me, the goals are really modern and really sleek, and I think some of the I guess the coolest part about communicating the goals to my friends and my networks is that I have this very sleek visuals that I can refer to, and something that's quite engaging for the mainstream. But when I look in the mainstream, I don't necessarily see the goals sort of spread around. If you were sitting at the helm, or if you could take a day in the day of the marketing or communications at UN, where would you like to see the goals go, and how is mainstream a goal for the goals, or do you think it's more of a delicate process of who gets to use these goals?
I'm going to rewind and just do one more thing, because we were talking about goals. I didn't mention for education, which of course is, you know, the whole here. No, but it's the whole idea of if we're going to fix climate change, we need to have educated people. So it can just feel with climate change that we actually need to fix that before we have time to educate all of the people, because a new generation can fix these problems. But anyway, so back to, I think the UN just, I'm just looking to see who's here from the UN. Yeah. 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 The UN is not known for being good at communicating, and I think that I hope that what we've started, which is a very crisp, a very clear, and a very positive visual language, I hope that that can sort of be a little virus that we've inserted into the whole UN bloodstream. And I think that the one thing is, you know, this is a profession, and there are fantastic people doing communication and doing design. And but it's also a field with a lot of enthusiasm, and we like the enthusiasm. We like that people take the icons and make their own weird little version of it, and anything that can make it more viral. But from a top level, I think that we need to have really, really good craftsmen to create all communication. And you know, if the UN is going to be a real force in policies and advocacy, you need to have also the best visual language. You need to have the best communication efforts. And you know, it's not always that way. Yeah. So I hope that it's... I'm just going on here now. I've said
Yeah. Thank you. You spoke about communication being connection and understanding to drive action. And these are things that you're able to take a very boring document and turn it into something that engages people and makes people want to take action. For young, aspiring creatives who are really interested in the SDGs, what are your words of advice? How can someone with a design background be involved, and what's their place in the campaign?
It's like when I said that we figured out what the focus was of the different goals, it's always to try to find logic in something. And there's a lot of confusion in the world, and there's a lot of people benefiting from confusion. There's, you know, there's a reason for everything that happens. And if there's misinformation, there's a reason for that. If there's lies, there's a reason for that. And we should always think about what the reason is behind everything. And so what we're trying to do is to just find something that is true and beautiful with it. And I've been obsessed with mathematics my whole life, because there's something with it that's so pure, and I think that it also may be part of I think a lot of good designers, not artists but designers, have a sort of at least a mild sense of OCD, that we want to have things line up in a way, and I think it's about clarifying things and be obvious with what you want to do. And we have a saying which is discard everything that means nothing, and that's sort of the hardest thing to do. That's the difference between Johann Sebastian Bach and Mozart. Mozart, he was rock and roll. He was just like, more. I'm going to have more strings. I'm going to have a bigger choir. While Bach, he was just trying to find the most condensed way to make something beautiful. Yeah. Maybe.
From going forward today, what's ahead? What's in the pipeline? What's the next project for developing the branding sort of toolkit for the global goals?
Yeah, I would need almost a whole session to talk about that. But we're working with icons for data, so for the indicators, which is really important. We're working to clarify all of the targets, giving them sort of shorter names and icons. We're working on creating a matrix for how the different targets are correlating, and how you can support many targets by supporting one target, which is a little bit part of the game that we're playing here. And so it's a lot about making things more obvious, making it easier to do data representation for feedback, but a unifying language for targets, and figuring out how the different 126 targets and 43 methods of implementation connects with everyday activities in schools, in businesses, and in government.
I did a little bit, 0 minutes left. Can I take an audience question? I actually did some research in the audience before the session, and I have a question from the audience, from Dan. There's a bit of, Dan has a question about what I call potential goal washing. So we have greenwashing and pink washing, and this notion that there potentially could be some goal washing with companies taking parts of the SDGs or the global goals and adding them to their products and saying we're sustainable, we do this. Does there need to be a moderator, and who does that moderator need to be?
Yeah, this is a really good question, and I think that the basis is that we need to spread the importance and the meanings of the goals to all of the 7 billion people, so there are checks and balances, so people can, if a company is saying we're supporting this goal, and then it turns out that they don't have gender equality, or they are polluting, or that both the people and media keep them responsible. Fortunately, a lot of companies are actually worried about going out with commitments. So I don't think that, so far we haven't seen any goal washing, but it is an intricate situation with getting it out and making sure that people also are following the intentions of the goals. There's no system for that right now.
Not yet.
No.
Thank you. That's all we have time for.